Samantha. So today I'm coming to you with a video which is all about all of my finished series. I recently made two videos about series. One was my unfinished series and the other one was a series that I'm not going to finish. So I will link both of those videos down below in case you want to go check them out. But this is the third video in that sort of like series about series. This is going to be all of the series that I have finished. I'm just going to go through them in order of how I rated them. So I'm going to go from the lowest rated series I have to the highest rated series that I have. So the first series on my list is the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. I ended up giving this series as a whole a 3.25 out of 5 stars. I wasn't the biggest fan of this series, as you can tell from my sort of low rating. 3.25 isn't too bad, but whenever I see anyone mention this duology in a video, they're always singing their praises for this book. Everyone loves this series and it just wasn't my cup of tea. I think it was massively overhyped, and I think that's what the problem was that everyone just kept on going on about how amazing it was. So when I read it, I was just highly disappointed. It wasn't my favorite thing in the world, but I did finish it. So that's the first series on my list. The next series on my list is the I Say Geology by Gail Forman. I also gave this series a 3.25 out of 5 stars. This is another series where a lot of people kept on going on about how good it was, and then I read the first book and I didn't really enjoy it that much. I think I gave it like a 3.5. It should have been something that made me cry, but I just didn't connect to the characters at all. So for that reason, the story didn't hit me really hard at all. So it was unfortunately not my favorite thing in the world. The next series on my list is the Fifth Wave Trilogy by Rick Yancey. I gave this series a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think I gave the first book 3 stars, the second book 4 or 5 stars, and the third book 3 stars again. I really enjoyed the first book when I first read it, and then I reread it and I enjoyed it way less. And I had the exact opposite thing with the second book in the series. The first time I read the second book, I did not like it, but then the second time I read it, I loved it. This series has definitely been one that has been up and down for me, and then I read the third book and I was just really disappointed. I just thought that it fell into a lot of the typical YA dystopian tropes, and also I've recently discovered that I just don't really like dystopian anymore. Reading the last book was a real struggle for me. This series just really wasn't for me, and I think that there are much better like alien stories out there. Definitely not going to be one that I'm rereading anytime soon, or ever actually. I'm not going to reread that series, but I did finish it off. So the next series on my list is one that I think I've finished, but I'm not really sure. But it's called Bite Me by Melissa Francis. This series had 2 books in it, but the second book ended off on a cliffhanger, and then I realized that it had been 8 years since the second book had been released, and the third book was not even expected to be published. So I think that this series was probably dropped. So I think I finished this series. I really enjoyed the series. I actually gave this series a 4 out of 5 stars overall. The next series on my list is the Summer Trilogy by Jenny Han. I gave this series a 4 out of 5 stars as well. I read this trilogy like when I first started booktube. It was like a long time ago. I really enjoyed this series when I read it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think if I reread it now though, that I would find it really irritating, because there were things that irritated me back then, but I used to be really generous with my ratings. I definitely think I wouldn't enjoy it as much now. It was still a really enjoyable series when I read it. The next series on my list is the Divergent Trilogy by Veronica Roth. This is actually a series that I binge read. I was obsessed with it. I loved the first book so much. I immediately bought the second and third books and like read them really quickly, and I ended up giving this series a 4 out of 5 stars. I definitely don't think I could reread it now because I actually hate the third book. Looking back on it, the third book was awful. It was info dumpy and the ending was terrible, but at the time I really enjoyed it, and I'm really thankful for that series because it's actually a series that helped to get me back into reading. The next series on my list is the Selection series by Akira Cass. I ended up giving this whole series a 4.1 out of 5 stars. If I hadn't included the last 2 books, it would have been a 4.5 or a 5, because I loved the original trilogy that was released for the Selection series, and then Akira Cass decided to write 2 spin-off books following the daughter of 2 characters, and she was the most annoying character ever, and I really did not like the last 2 books in the series, but the first 3 were so much fun. It's like the dystopian version of The Bachelor. It's great. It's a lot of fun. It's really trashy. The next series on my list is the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins. Of course this series is going to be on the list. I feel like I haven't talked about the Hunger Games in so long, but I really love this trilogy. I didn't like the third book very much, but I loved the first 2 books. I do love the movies as well. I really need to reread this series because it's been so long. The Hunger Games is one of those things that really got me back into reading. I literally picked it up and read all 3 books like in a week. I could not put the books down. They were so good. I ended up giving this series a 4.3 out of 5 stars. The next series on my list is the Lux series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I ended up giving this whole series a 4.4 out of 5 stars. I loved this series so much. It is this super trashy YA alien series. It's just so much fun. The perfect thing to binge. I think I binged it back in 2016 and I loved it so much. I had so much fun. If you haven't read it, don't know what you're doing because it's great. The next series on my list is one that I absolutely adore, and that is The Confessions of Georgia Nicholson by Louise Renison. I ended up giving this whole series a 4.6 out of 5 stars. There are 10 books in the series, which sounds intimidating, but they're all really short. Like I think the longest one is probably like 350 pages, like max. They're all really short. They're all so much fun. Follow this girl called Georgia and her crazy life. She is a hilarious, weird character and her family are just crazy. It's so much fun. You need to read Georgia Nicholson if you haven't. I would say it's a little bit childish, but I still think I'd enjoy it if I reread it now because it's just so much fun. The next series on my list is, of course, the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. I love this series so much. If you don't know, I was actually the creator of the TMI versus TID tag, and I made it because I just loved both of Cassandra Clare's series so much. They were just so good. I gave this whole series a 4.7 out of 5 stars. It would be 5 stars if City of Fallen Angels was better, but I don't actually like City of Fallen Angels that much. I think I gave it 4 stars the last time I read it, so it's not my favorite, but I love the Mortal Instruments. The next series on my list is the Shades of Magic series by V. Schwab. This starts off with A Darker Shade of Magic, and oh my god, this series is like one of my favorites of all time. It is so good. I gave it a 4.7 out of 5 stars overall. I love this trilogy so much. I love pretty much everything that V. Schwab writes, so yeah, not surprising that I loved this one too, I don't think. A Darker Shade of Magic was actually the first book I read by V. Schwab, and I'm so glad I did because it just introduced me to her wonderful, wonderful writing, wonderful trilogy. Definitely read it if you haven't. It's fantastic. The next series on my list is the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy by Jenny Han. I also gave this one a 4.7 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the first and the third book. The second book was not as good, but overall I adored this series. It is so much fun. Such a cute, fun contemporary series, and I feel like I've talked about it so much, but I just love it. I kind of want to reread it, even though I only read it in the summer, so it hasn't been that long, but I'm like, I want to reread it. The next series on my list, which I've put down here even though it is going to be continued on, but the next books in the series follow different characters, so I'm gonna go ahead and say that I finished this series, and that is the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas. I gave this series a 4.8 out of 5 stars because I gave the first 2 books 5 stars and then the third book 4.5 stars. I love the ACOTAR series. I'm sure you know this already, but I absolutely love this series. Akamath is one of my favorite books of all time. It's just so fantastic. It's such a fun new adult fantasy series. Just if you haven't read it, I don't know what you're doing, but definitely it is new adult, so if you're quite young, definitely don't read it because Akamath might kill you. The next series on my list is, of course, the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. Probably my favorite series of all time. I actually only gave this series a 4.9 out of 5 stars instead of a full 5 stars because I'm not a huge fan of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I just think that book is way too long, so I think I gave it a 4.5. I still enjoy it, but it's just like definitely my least favorite book in the series. I actually only finished Harry Potter in 2016. I hadn't read the last book until 2016. It was a long time coming and I finally finished it. It is such a fantastic series. If you haven't read Harry Potter, please do it. It's so good, especially the last book. The next series on my list is the Infernal Devices trilogy by Cassandra Clare. I actually give this trilogy a 5 out of 5 stars because I loved it so much when I read it. It has everything I love. It's historical fiction, which I love. It is fantasy, which I love. It has fantastic characters that I love, and it's just everything you could ever want in a book trilogy. It's so good. It has a love triangle which actually works as a love triangle. It is so good. Read it. Just read it. Read all of the Cassie Clare books because she's so good. The next series on my list is the Anna and the French Kiss trilogy by Stephanie Perkins. I read this series a while ago now, actually. I think I probably finished this series in 2015, so it's been quite a while since I've read it, but I ended up giving this series a 5 out of 5 stars because I loved every single book so much. I definitely feel like my opinions will have changed a bit when I reread this series next, which is gonna happen at some point because I know that the first book is quite problematic, but at the time that I read it, I loved it. And the final series that I have completed is the This Savage Song duology by V. Schwab. As I said, I love V. Schwab. It's actually called the Monsters of Verity duology. I got it wrong, sorry. But the Monsters of Verity duology is amazing. I gave this duology a 5 out of 5 stars because it is just so enjoyable. I love everything about it. I love the characters, I love the world, I love the concept, I just love everything about this series. Definitely check it out if you haven't read it. It's so good. It's a duology. You can get it done really quickly, so read it, please. Those are all of my finished series. Please let me know if you finished any of the same series as I have down below in those comments and let me know your thoughts on them. But yes, that is going to be all for today's video, so I hope you liked it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe down below, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye!